All right, so here I am with Nick, who is a friend of Walter's, and we're actually going to try to bring Blue II back to life. Hello, Nick.
Hey.
What is it you're getting ready to do?
Well, right now we're going to take off the intake panel so that we can get down to the fuel injectors.
So we're going to replace the injectors. And then the starter, right?
Yes. Definitely have a problem with the solenoid and the starter not engaging properly.
All right. All right. So Nick was telling me he grew up working in a mechanic shop.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you raced cars?
Race cars, I liked imports, so I grew up on the mechanic shop working on Corvettes and re-gel coat the original Stingrays back in the 70s and 80s, so Stingrays models. So any opportunity that I got to turn a wrench and learn, that's what I did.
I kind of wish I had that experience. It's like I don't even know the name of the tools. It's not bad.
Yeah. So we disconnected the battery so we don't disturb any of the sensors, unplugging and plugging, because sometimes they can short out that way.
Now, why did you take off that? Is that like the air filter over there?
Just the breather box for the air filter, yep. So these are on there pretty old.
And this sensor, this is a sensor, right?
Yes.
Well, what does it sense?
This should sense right now the airflow going into the intake, top of the intake. Safety switch is on, but it's tight.
Come on.
Comes straight off. That's not wanting to come off. Okay. Well. We can continue on. Let's see. And it'll seal.
I notice that thing leaks every so often.
Yeah.
Is that because it's got a bad seal or something?
Yeah, it looks like it's leaking just from the hose where it seals up. The hose may expand some because of the heat. The intake is super dirty. I did notice that. A good throttle body cleaner can help assist with that. So I can show you what I mean over here. A lot of times I have like a spray.
Uh-huh.
So that normally you can spray, but if you look over here in the corner, you can actually see all the black and the
that's
on the panel.
wow.
And it's a lot of grit on that plate. Just that little bit is enough to cause it to have rough idles and suck too much air. Idle high, idle funny.
This piece you're trying to remove, what is it called?
It's actually the intake.
The intake?
It sits right above the fuel rail that connects into the fuel injectors that we will be replacing.
Now, when you say intake, it's where the air flows through? Is that what it is?
Yes, no fuel actually goes through this whatsoever. It's just air. Sometimes you can have a rough idle. When I was telling you earlier about a dry gasket intake for the intake manifold gasket, it's the intake manifold. A lot of times there's gaskets where the metal portion of the plenum actually meets the top of the motor, and there's gaskets right here in between. So, situation on that is that we want to see, it looks like it's a dry gasket, so that's good, which means it's reusable. Just good. Still have a sensor connected. Back of this. But you see the rubber gaskets, they're reusable. Wipe them down before you put them in there. That's my screwdriver. But now we have the fuel rail, and the fuel injectors plug into the fuel rail.
Ah.
Split. Second air. Now I'm just looking for a bleed for the fuel rail, which is like a little tiny valve stem. The main thing what you want to be cautious about is these are fine, but you want to stay away from these dropping anything in there, because you definitely don't want it to drop in the motor. Sometimes what you can do is stuff rag or something down in there so it doesn't go.
Do you want me to get like a towel or somewhere to cover it up?
Yeah, if you want to do that, that'll probably be a smart idea just in case.
All right, let me do
I'm
that.
pretty good at what I do, but I don't want to risk a chance.
All right, we covered up the holes with Old Navy shirt and Old Mailman shirt.
Right now I'm just undoing the fuel rail. So that's connected to the fuel injectors, all 6 of them. So, and then what I'll do is I'll undo, there's little tabs, they've got some oil and stuff on them. They're red. You have to pull those up, you see it slides, and then to be able to lift the, some of them may be broke and snapped. They're just meant so the connectors don't come undone while you're driving. It's a little safety tab.
If they break, no big deal.
Well, I mean, you don't want them coming up while you're driving, because then that will make the injector not work. But it's plastic. This is an older van, so plastic becomes brittle after age. So just be careful. If they do kind of break off a little bit, you still can utilize them. Like this one's broke, but it'll still lock back in place on the connector as long as I still have it
Right.
where the slide part connects.
I see. So even that's why you saved that one piece that came out.
Right. Looking at the way these injectors connect. Looks like they have push clamps. Clamp on the injector on either side. And it just slides back. So, I don't know if you can see. That holds it in place.
I see.
Land on top of the motor just because the way it is. What I was talking about, a little fuel pitcock, it's where you can measure the fuel pressure in the fuel rail. I didn't see one on here. Normally they're on right on top of the motor. Just looks like a little valve stem. So, and normally what you'll do in that scenario is that you'll undo the valve stem and you'll just depress it so that the fuel rail is not pressurized.
I see.
So this vehicle really hasn't been ran in a long time. So, and shouldn't be too pressurized.
Oh, the whole assembly comes out.
Some of them will come disconnected.
Okay.
And it's got a little bit of fuel still in there. So, but right now what I'm worried about is I want to count all the clips. Get them out. We should have 6. Rag will help catch some of this. The injectors just popped in. Looks fairly dirty on top. They're so-so. But you're worried that you might have one that's not firing properly into the cylinder, which we got new ones to replace those. Trying to mop up some of this fuel.
So now, what does the injector do actually?
It's a computer-generated, basically, sprayer for fuel. There's a sensor in the motor that every time it makes a revolution per cylinder, it registers in the computer and it fires through the wires a specific injector that sprays during the combustion cycle of the motor.
That one looks really dark and
some of them have a lot of grit. One thing too, you'll see some normally what I have, I didn't bring it this time, I just kind of rushed over here, but the O-ring that's around the injector, I'll pull one off. A lot of times they'll be stuck down in there or stuck in here, and I have a long hook that basically looks like a little tiny miniature screwdriver. So that it's an O-ring puller, so I can pull the O-ring without kind of jamming it down the motor or sticking a screwdriver right there.
like that one stuck.
Yeah, so
right in there.
Normally that hook would help with that. So, and there's also another O-ring on the the bottom of the injector. But you really don't want to stick anything sharp to get that O-ring out. You want something that's not blunt because you don't want to scratch the inside of that where it seals. So I just use that.
It's basically a little flat.
Yeah, it's not going to scratch it. So. That all looks good. I'm just looking for any cracks or anything like that, stress fractures that might be in the fuel rail. Well, you have a leak later on, so all that looks good. So I'm going to get a little rag and I'm just going to kind of clean around the holes without trying to push debris in there. And then we'll put in the new injectors.
Alrighty.
Yeah. So we don't damage the other O-rings while trying to screw them back in there. We're going to just very thinly lubricate them with some jelly. Lubricating jelly, Vaseline will work, any type of petroleum jelly. You don't want any water-based jelly, obviously, because water and fuel doesn't mix for combustion in a vehicle.
Oh, I see. You're going to use that to coat it with the lubricator?
Well, I'm going to use it for right now to kind of wipe. I don't want a whole lot of shirt to get down in there. I kind of want to be able to see what I'm doing. Just because I really don't want to be trying to push a whole bunch of that debris in there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be trying just to kind of wipe away from the hole and out, cleaning. And just going from different spots of the shirt.
What happens if something falls in there?
It'll go out through the exhaust, but that's how you get big deposits of carbon. So, and I can show you another way to get rid of carbon. So, in the same way as they do in a mechanic shop where they charge you $300 to do a fuel injector service, which is basically you just get a can of seafoam. I use IV tubing just because I puncture the can right there where you normally pull the tab, and it just has an IV line. You can use vacuum hose and just like a vacuum tee. And all I'm going to do is on the intake is just pull one hose off and attach the hose, the vacuum hose that I attached to the seafoam can, and then just run the vehicle.
Oh.
You're going to see that at an idle, it's going to be a little bit of chuggish. You'll just advance the accelerator just enough when you're running it through, and you're going to notice a lot of smoke coming out of the tailpipe. What's that doing? It's burning all the carbon off. So, and eventually after you drain the whole can, it'll clean the system. So, burn all the carbon off. So we got the new injectors.
No, they're not like numbered or anything, so anyone can replace another one?
Replace, yeah. So I'm just going to take just a little bit. Just lubricate so it's easy because the other ones are old. So, and they have basically compressed down. So, neat. You can see how they've compressed down.
Right.
So these are going to be a lot tighter going in. So, I'm going to just push and they'll snap in place. You'll feel them, and it should free move still in the place where it's at. The main thing you want to try to avoid is raking like dirt or debris in the injector or where it attaches in the fuel rail. Basically you're just using the petroleum jelly so it doesn't roll the gasket or the O-ring. And roll the O-ring, what I mean is like if you push it in there, sometimes it'll roll it off of the lip where it's supposed to be, and you don't want that.
So it's basically just to allow it to slide in and keep the seal.
Right. hear it click, but there's a recessed point in there where that O-ring's supposed to ride, so.
Now all that black stuff down here is just like dirt and grime and stuff?
It's just oil, residue, looks like you got some leaky valve cover gaskets. So, and basically that's all. Oil attracts dirt, sticks to it, so basically that's all it is oil, grime, and debris.
Now when you replace like the injectors, should you replace all of them or just one that you know is misfiring?
The best rule of thumb is to go ahead and try to replace all of them if you can afford them. Normally injectors, I know on GMs they run about $65 on the cheaper side per injector.
Really?
Yeah. So, but if you do know you have a trouble cylinder, you know, first off you can do the seafoam aspect, like what I was saying with either the IV tubing or vacuum line. That may unclog a lot of your injectors. There are some specialty shops around here that will rebuild injectors for you. You can pull them, take them to them, and they'll rebuild them. Basically, break them down and put new filters in them and new jets and make sure they're super clean.
So like Charles is the guy who actually bought all these. He spent quite a bit of money.
Probably, yeah. So although comparable, Amazon and eBay, they're pretty comparable nowadays for injectors. Basically, I'm gonna align all of them when I can. Like a puzzle.
Now you know you're working on somewhat of a pseudo-famous car, right? I think the van is more famous than I am.
So basically, I'm just aligning all of them and just making sure everything's in place where they're supposed to be. Just kind of slowly wiggling back and forth because the petroleum jelly is going to make it slide down on there just to where it's nice, tight, and snug. Then we can add our clips. Which is fun. Easier said than done. It's tight.
And that's how you can tell it made it. It snaps.
Yep. That's not on there all the way. Awesome. What do I do with that? I'm doing is I'm just making sure it's got a little notch right there that has to go on a little beveled edge along with the teeth sliding into the notch on the injector.
I see, and that locks like...
And yeah, and that one's not up into the fuel rail all the way. So I will have to wiggle and play with that one. Get these others.
And that's important because it holds it in there?
Yes, you don't want it. If you don't have it proper, it will leak. It's not something that you want. Pull this back up. The injector should go with it. Very carefully turn it over because I don't want to get debris actually in the injectors. You see how they just snap on and lock? That one's not up in there either. There it goes.
Is it better to do it like this way, have it up, and then...
You can. I like to have them down in. It's a little bit tighter, a little bit more to play. But then I'm not worried about flipping this back over and getting debris, so I have to be very cautious when I'm doing this.
I see.
When I flip it back over, because I don't want debris in the jets. It'll spray it off, but less dirt, the better. Now, since I did pull this off before I placed down in there, what I want to make sure is that all the O-rings are still on all the injectors, because if I pull the fuel rail up, there is a possibility that one of the O-rings may have slipped off there and be down into the actual port where the injector goes. So, and you'll have to re-put it on the injector at that point. Basically, I'll do one side. They all should kind of feel a snap, and you'll know you're in where you gotta be. Which it is. So, and then, like I said, working with all these small little tiny parts and clips, that's why we covered these. So don't drop anything down in there, because that will be potentially dangerous, if not fatal, to your motor. Secure this tight, and then maybe like another quarter turn. plugs back on our injectors. And then we're going to push our tabs down just to make sure they're locked in place. There's that one that broke off. Slide it back on.
Oh, I'll let him in. So you've installed all the connections?
All the electronic connections is in place. They're locked in place. I'm just feeling just to make sure that nothing's loose. Okay, and now what I've done is I went in the vehicle and basically I've turned the key on 3 times